In the year of our Lord 1504, within the hallowed walls of the San Marco Monastery, Fra Bartolomeo, a humble servant of God and a master of the Florentine brush, contemplated the void. Before him stood a canvas, vast and demanding, a blank slate awaiting the divine inspiration that he prayed would soon descend. His fingers, stained with pigment, danced across the pages of his sketchbook. Sketches of the Virgin, serene and sorrowful, emerged from the charcoal dust. He sought to capture not just her likeness, but the very soul of motherhood, the divine grief that resonated with the human condition. The commission was a grand one, an altarpiece for the very church that housed him. The prior, a man of shrewd intellect and unwavering faith, entrusted Bartolomeo with the task, knowing the friar's talent was a gift from God, but also a responsibility to be wielded with care. Florence in those days was a city ablaze with artistic fervor and political intrigue. The Medici family, though recently returned from exile, cast a long shadow, their influence permeating every aspect of Florentine life. The air thrummed with ambition, creativity, and the ever-present threat of war. Alessandra Gilardi, daughter of a wealthy merchant, was a woman out of step with her time. While other young women of her station concerned themselves with marriage and needlepoint, Alessandra devoured books, her mind a sponge eager to absorb the knowledge of the ancients. Her father, though a practical man of commerce, recognized and encouraged her intellect, engaging her in lively debates about politics, philosophy, and the state of the world. He knew she possessed a rare gift, a keenness of mind that set her apart. Back at San Marco, Fra Bartolomeo began the painstaking process of preparing his paints. He believed that true art demanded dedication at every stage, from the selection of the finest pigments to the careful application of each brushstroke. Yet as he looked out upon the city, a disquiet settled upon him. A sense of unease, a feeling that something was amiss, something lurking beneath the surface of Florence's vibrant facade. Meanwhile, Alessandra, walking through the bustling marketplace, observed the same undercurrent of tension. Whispers of political unrest, rumors of plague in neighboring cities filled the air, creating a palpable sense of foreboding. Unbeknownst to each other, Fra Bartolomeo and Alessandra shared a premonition, a sense that Florence stood on the precipice of change, that the altarpiece, still in its nascent stage, would somehow become intertwined with the fate of the city itself. Fra Bartolomeo dipped his brush into the blue pigment, and with a silent prayer made his first stroke. Fra Bartolomeo commenced his work on the altarpiece. The commission was a prestigious honor, a testament to his skill, but an unsettling feeling gnawed at him. Images, like fleeting shadows, haunted his waking hours, visions he felt compelled to capture on canvas. He began with the backdrop, the familiar Tuscan hills rendered with his usual skill. Yet, against his conscious will, his hand guided him to paint a peculiar anomaly, a sudden, unseasonal snowfall blanketing the distant vineyards. He couldn't explain it, a disquieting impulse guiding his brush. Days turned into weeks, and the altarpiece grew, layer upon layer. Another unsettling vision compelled him to add a minute fissure to the facade of the Palazzo Vecchio, barely noticeable to the casual observer, a subtle imperfection amidst the majestic architecture. Alessandra Gilardi, a frequent visitor to San Marco, found herself drawn to the altarpiece. She possessed a keen eye for detail, a trait honed by years of assisting her father in his merchant business. It was she who noticed the peculiar anomalies embedded within the artwork, subtle imperfections that seemed strangely out of place. Fra Bartolomeo, Alessandra inquired, her voice laced with curiosity. "Why the snow? It is summer, is it not? And that crack upon the Palazzo Vecchio, is that intentional?" The friar shifted uncomfortably, unable to offer a satisfactory explanation. Fra Bartolomeo pondered Alessandra's questions long into the night. He had dismissed the unsettling details as mere flights of fancy, artistic whims, but her astute observations forced him to confront the disturbing possibility that something far more profound was at play. A week later, an eerie darkness descended upon Florence. The sun, usually a radiant beacon, was obscured by an unnatural haze, casting long, distorted shadows across the city. Fear began to grip the populace. Whispers of ill omens and divine displeasure filled the air. "It is a sign," an old woman cried, her voice trembling with fear. "The heavens themselves weep for our sins. We are doomed." Panic rippled through the crowd, fueled by ignorance and superstition. Fra Bartolomeo, witnessing the darkened sky, felt a chill run down his spine. He rushed to the altarpiece, his eyes frantically searching for answers. The connection was undeniable. The painting was not merely a representation of the world, it was somehow influencing it. Alessandra, witnessing the eerie gloom, felt a surge of dread. Her suspicions confirmed. She knew she had to act. She rushed toward San Marco, determined to uncover the truth behind the Florentine prophecy before it was too late. Fra Bartolomeo meticulously painted the facade of the Palazzo Vecchio, noting a slight crack above the main entrance, a detail he felt added to the city's character. He dipped his brush in ochre, highlighting the imperfection, unaware of its significance. Alessandra strolled through the Piazza della Signoria. As she passed the Palazzo Vecchio, she noticed a piece of cornice had fallen, creating a fissure above the entrance. It seemed a mirror image of the detail Fra Bartolomeo had recently added to his altarpiece. Back at the Gilardi Palazzo, Alessandra dismissed the fallen cornice as mere coincidence. Such things happened in a city as old as Florence. Still, the image lingered in her mind. Giovanni Salviati visited Fra Bartolomeo's studio. He admired the friar's skill, particularly the way he captured the city's essence. He noted the inclusion of what he considered to be artistic flourishes, such as the cracked facade. The detail was interesting, even intriguing, but surely insignificant. Giovanni complimented Fra Bartolomeo on his work, making particular note of the detail on the Palazzo Vecchio. Fra Bartolomeo merely smiled, stating that it was important to paint the world as it was, imperfections and all. Leaving the monastery, Giovanni dismissed any notion of the painting possessing supernatural qualities. He considered it to be a product of a talented, observant mind. Nothing more. A letter arrived from a trading contact in Siena. Plague had broken out. The city gates were closed and people were dying in the streets. Alessandra felt a chill, even though it was a warm evening. As Fra Bartolomeo painted, he found himself drawn to depicting sickness and suffering. He added a cluster of figures to the background, their faces gaunt and pale, their clothes tattered. He couldn't explain why, but the image felt necessary. Giovanni received disturbing news. The plague in Siena was spreading rapidly. Trade routes were disrupted, and panic was growing. He began to understand the potential economic consequences. Alessandra visited the San Marco monastery. She stood before the altarpiece, her gaze drawn to the figures Fra Bartolomeo had recently added. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. This was more than coincidence. She knew with a growing certainty that the painting held a terrible secret. The Arno, normally a life-giving artery for Florence, had become a menacing presence. Alessandra watched, her unease growing with each passing hour as the water level crept higher, mirroring the flood depicted in Fra Bartolomeo's altarpiece. The detail, once a curious addition, now felt like a dire omen. Giovanni, engrossed in matters of state and family, received reports of the flooding. He saw it as a natural disaster, an inconvenience but nothing more. Yet, a nagging thought, a fleeting image of Alessandra's earnest face and her strange theories, lingered in the back of his mind. Alessandra, driven by a growing sense of urgency, made her way to the San Marco monastery. The image of the cracked facade in the altarpiece haunted her, coupled with the recent tremors felt throughout the city. Time felt like a luxury she could no longer afford. Fra Bartolomeo stood before his masterpiece, his brow furrowed in concentration. He saw not a source of prophecy, but a testament to his faith and artistic skill. He dismissed the whispers of doom, choosing to focus on the divine inspiration that guided his hand. Fra Bartolomeo, Alessandra began, her voice trembling slightly, the Arno. The tremors, they are as you painted them. The details are coming to life. The friar listened patiently, but his eyes held a mixture of amusement and pity. Signorina Gilardi, Fra Bartolomeo replied gently, the Arno floods periodically. Earth tremors are not uncommon. To read prophecy into artistic embellishment is fanciful. But the figures, Fra Bartolomeo, Alessandra insisted. The man with the plague sores, the woman weeping, they are not mere embellishments. They are appearing in our streets now. Later that night, Fra Bartolomeo found himself unable to dismiss Alessandra's words entirely. He had painted those figures, yes, but where had they come from? Was it merely the product of a troubled imagination or something more? Driven by her conviction, Alessandra began delving into old Florentine folklore and prophecies. She sought any mention of artists with similar gifts, any legend that might explain the power she believed resided within Fra Bartolomeo's painting. The next morning, Alessandra returned to the San Marco monastery. She found Fra Bartolomeo standing before the altarpiece, his expression pensive. A seed of doubt had been planted, and the fertile ground of faith and artistry had begun to stir. Giovanni Salviati, a man accustomed to the flow of information, received a discreet message detailing Alessandra Gilardi's unusual inquiries at San Marco. The whispers of a prophetic painting piqued his interest. He leaned back in his chair, the gears of his mind already turning, calculating the potential advantage such a thing might offer. Alessandra's suspicions deepened with each passing day. The crack in the Palazzo Vecchio, once a minor detail in Fra Bartolomeo's painting, was now undeniably real and growing. More alarming was the palpable tension in the marketplace. The grain stores were running low, and whispers of famine spread like wildfire through the city's lower classes. Fra Bartolomeo stood before his masterpiece, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was acutely aware of Alessandra's unease, sensing the impending doom she perceived. The friar knew he was merely the instrument of this prophecy, not its author, and the lack of control terrified him. Giovanni, ever the pragmatist, decided to investigate the painting himself. He arrived at San Marco Monastery, his presence causing a stir among the monks. He requested an audience with Fra Bartolomeo, claiming an interest in the artist's work and wishing to offer his patronage. Fra Bartolomeo, though wary of the nobleman's intentions, could not refuse his request. He spoke of his artistic process, carefully omitting any mention of the unsettling visions that seemed to bleed into his work. Giovanni listened intently, his gaze shifting between the friar and the painting, searching for any sign of deception. Alessandra, having learned of Giovanni's visit, watched from a distance as his carriage departed. She distrusted the nobleman's motives, suspecting he sought to exploit the painting's power for his own political gain. Her resolve to understand the painting's message, and to use it for the good of Florence, hardened. In the darker corners of Florence, whispers of the prophetic painting also reached other ears. A rival faction, envious of the Salviati's influence, saw an opportunity to undermine their power. They plotted to acquire the painting for themselves, intending to manipulate its prophecies to their advantage. Haunted by the unfolding prophecies, Fra Bartolomeo sought solace in prayer. He wrestled with the ethical implications of his art, questioning whether he was a vessel of divine will or a harbinger of destruction. The weight of Florence's fate pressed heavily upon his soul. Alessandra, unable to stand idly by, ventured into the countryside. The reports of famine were tragically understated. Entire villages were starving, their crops withered and their hope extinguished. The once fertile lands were now barren and cracked, a stark reminder of the painting's grim predictions. Giovanni, from his vantage point high above the city, surveyed the growing crisis. The famine, coupled with the whispers of prophecy, created an atmosphere of unease and fear. He knew that control was slipping, and that whoever could decipher the painting's secrets would hold the key to Florence's future, and perhaps his own. The air in Fra Bartolomeo's studio hung thick with the scent of oil paint and incense. Alessandra, her brow furrowed in concentration, traced a finger along the painted facade of the Palazzo Vecchio, her voice barely a whisper. "This crack, Fra Bartolomeo, it seems to have widened since you first painted it." Fra Bartolomeo, his eyes magnified by the late afternoon light, studied the detail Alessandra indicated, a line seemingly insignificant that had grown more pronounced with each passing day. "Indeed, Alessandra," he murmured, "it is as if the painting itself is changing." Giovanni Salviati, his mind ever attuned to political implications, examined a map of Florence. He considered the potential ramifications of the Palazzo Vecchio's structural weakness, both literal and metaphorical, and how it could be exploited by the city's rivals. Alessandra delved into the historical records of Florence, searching for past instances of similar architectural damage and any associated omens or prophecies. She hoped to find a precedent, a key to understanding the painting's pronouncements. Within the San Marco monastery, tension brewed. Fra Bartolomeo faced increasing scrutiny from the church. Cardinal Sodrini, a powerful figure, questioned the friar's work, hinting at accusations of heresy and the dangers of dabbling in matters beyond mortal comprehension. Giovanni, walking a delicate line between faith and pragmatism, secured his position. He met with informants, gathering intelligence and maneuvering behind the scenes, ensuring his family's influence would remain secure, regardless of the painting's ultimate fate. The skies above Florence turned a bruised purple, mirroring the anxiety in Alessandra's heart. The Arno River, swollen with relentless rain, began to creep beyond its banks, fulfilling a disturbing detail from Fra Bartolomeo's painting. As the Arno surged through the streets, Fra Bartolomeo found solace only in prayer. He knelt before the altarpiece, begging for divine intervention, as the floodwaters invaded the sacred space of the San Marco monastery. Giovanni, ever the pragmatist, organized rescue efforts, his family's resources mobilized to aid the citizens of Florence. He navigated the chaotic streets, his actions driven by a mixture of genuine concern and political calculation. Amidst the devastation, Alessandra, Fra Bartolomeo, and Giovanni stood before the submerged altarpiece. The flood, a terrifying reality ripped from the canvas, served as a stark reminder of the painting's power and a chilling prelude to what was yet to come. The cracks in the Palazzo Vecchio, initially a subtle detail in Fra Bartolomeo's painting, had widened, mirroring the growing fissures within Florentine society. Famine gripped the city, and whispers of plague grew louder with each passing day. The friar felt the weight of his art, a burden heavier than any canvas. Alessandra, driven by a relentless pursuit of understanding, meticulously documented each disaster, cross-referencing them with corresponding elements within the painting. The patterns were undeniable, terrifyingly precise. She felt a growing sense of urgency, a race against a future already painted. Giovanni, ever the pragmatist, monitored the escalating chaos with a calculating gaze. The painting, whether divinely inspired or cleverly crafted, had become a dangerous tool, capable of swaying public opinion and destabilizing the fragile political landscape. Control, he knew, was paramount. The whispers surrounding Fra Bartolomeo's painting had reached the ears of the church hierarchy. Fearful of accusations of heresy and the potential for unrest, they summoned him to explain the unsettling accuracy of his artistic premonitions. He struggled to articulate the inexplicable force that guided his brush. The streets of Florence, once vibrant with commerce and artistry, now echoed with the cries of the afflicted. Famine had transformed the city into a breeding ground for despair, and Alessandra witnessed the suffering firsthand, fueling her determination to decipher the painting's secrets. Giovanni, ever the schemer, saw opportunity amidst the chaos. He began to subtly manipulate events, using the painting's prophecies to his advantage, sowing discord among rival factions and consolidating his own power. The line between patron and puppeteer blurred with each passing day. The burden of prophecy weighed heavily on Fra Bartolomeo. He questioned the source of his gift, the morality of his art. Was he a vessel of divine foresight or merely a harbinger of doom? The answers eluded him, leaving him adrift in a sea of doubt. Alessandra confronted Giovanni with her suspicions, accusing him of exploiting the painting's prophecies for his own gain. Their alliance, once forged in mutual curiosity, now teetered on the brink of collapse, strained by conflicting ideologies and personal ambitions. Public unrest reached a boiling point. The latest prophecy depicted in the altarpiece, a devastating fire engulfing a section of the city, had come to pass. Accusations of divine retribution and political malfeasance filled the air, threatening to ignite a full-scale rebellion. The final prophecy was unveiled. A skeletal figure, a personification of death, foreshadowed a plague unlike any Florence had ever witnessed. The gathering storm had broken, and the city stood on the precipice of oblivion. Alessandra felt a growing unease. The patterns were becoming too clear, the prophecies too precise. Someone within their circle was sharing information, manipulating events to align with the painting's grim predictions. She had to identify the traitor before Florence paid the ultimate price. Giovanni, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity. If the painting truly held prophetic power, that power could be harnessed. He confided in a trusted advisor, a man who had served his family for years, tasking him with discreetly gathering information and ensuring the painting's predictions benefited the Salviati family's standing. Fra Bartolomeo prayed for guidance. He felt a growing darkness surrounding the painting, a malevolent force twisting his art for its own purposes. He questioned his own role, wondering if his talent had become a curse upon Florence. Years before he took his vows, Baccio was simply a young artist, consumed by the beauty of the world. He saw patterns and connections others missed, a gift that both inspired and haunted him. He felt the city speaking to him, through its stones and through its people. "You used us, Giovanni," Alessandra accused, her voice trembling with anger. "You saw the painting's power and sought to control it, regardless of the cost." Giovanni feigned surprise, denying any wrongdoing, but Alessandra saw the truth in his eyes. Examining the altarpiece, Fra Bartolomeo noticed a detail he had subconsciously painted, a depiction of a granary near the Mercato Nuovo. The granary's roof was subtly damaged, a detail that now resonated with terrifying clarity. The granary was the next target. A stray spark, perhaps deliberately set, ignited the granary. The fire spread rapidly, consuming the city's precious grain reserves. Panic erupted as the flames threatened to engulf the surrounding buildings. Alessandra's fears were confirmed. The painting was not merely predicting events, it was somehow triggering them. Giovanni watched the chaos unfold, believing he was orchestrating events to his advantage. He failed to realize that the prophetic force was far greater than his ambition, a force that would ultimately consume him as well. Despite her anger and betrayal, Alessandra couldn't stand idly by. She plunged into the chaos, helping to evacuate the injured and organize the desperate attempts to contain the blaze. Her concern for the city was greater than her anger at Giovanni. Fra Bartolomeo stared at the altarpiece, his heart heavy with dread. The fire had triggered a new prophecy, one far more devastating than anything he had foreseen. The image of a cloaked figure standing near the Ponte Vecchio, a sign of something terrible to come, became clear as the painting seemed to finish itself. They were running out of time. The final panel of the altarpiece seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Where once stood serene figures, now swirled a vortex of pestilence and political chaos, a vision so potent it threatened to shatter Fra Bartolomeo's sanity. Alessandra, having deciphered the latest cryptic symbols in her notes, arrived at San Marco breathless and terrified. The plague, as foretold, was escalating beyond control, and the political landscape was fracturing into warring factions. Even Giovanni, the pragmatic nobleman, could no longer deny the altarpiece's power. The prophecy was unfolding with chilling accuracy, leaving them with a desperate race against time to find a solution, a way to avert total disaster. Racked with guilt and a sense of profound responsibility, Fra Bartolomeo sought solace in prayer. He begged for a sign, a path to redemption, a way to undo the devastating future he had unwittingly painted into existence. Alessandra immersed herself in historical records and forgotten lore, searching for any precedent, any ritual, any ancient knowledge that might offer a means to counteract the painting's prophetic curse. The weight of Florence's fate rested heavily on her shoulders. Giovanni, utilizing his influence and resources, attempted to stabilize the crumbling political order. He sought to unite the fractured factions, to forge a common front against the encroaching chaos, but suspicion and self-interest ran deep. The plague tightened its grip on Florence. Once vibrant streets became desolate graveyards, the sounds of laughter replaced by the cries of the sick and the mournful tolling of church bells. Hope dwindled with each passing day. Fra Bartolomeo, driven to the brink of despair, contemplated a radical solution. Could the painting itself be destroyed, its power extinguished, even at the cost of his own artistic legacy? Alessandra, suspecting Giovanni was withholding vital information, confronted him with her suspicions. The line between ally and adversary blurred as trust eroded under the immense pressure of the unfolding prophecy. Giovanni, faced with impossible choices, prepared to make a sacrifice, a decision that would determine the fate of Florence, knowing that even the best intentions could pave the road to ruin. He was ready to gamble everything. The final prophecy loomed, the image of fire consuming the Mercato Nuovo seared into their minds. Fra Bartolomeo, Alessandra, and Giovanni convened in the friar's studio, the completed altarpiece a silent, imposing witness to their desperate planning. Alessandra, drawing on her merchant family's knowledge of trade routes and building materials, identified vulnerable points within the Mercato Nuovo. Giovanni, with his political influence, began discreetly organizing fire brigades and clearing debris from around the market square. Giovanni, aware of the potential for panic, carefully framed the preparations as routine safety measures, minimizing the risk of widespread fear. He used his influence to quell rumors and maintain order. Fra Bartolomeo, wrestling with his conscience, sought solace in prayer. He questioned the source of his visions, wondering if they were a divine warning or a curse he had unwittingly unleashed upon Florence. Alessandra, acting on a tip from a trusted informant, confronted a known black marketeer suspected of hoarding flammable materials to profit from the impending disaster. The tension hung thick in the air, the fate of the city potentially resting on this confrontation. Giovanni, facing resistance from the church, argued for a more pragmatic approach, emphasizing the need to protect the city and its people, even if it meant temporarily setting aside theological concerns. He met the church's hardliners with swift and harsh rebuttal. The prophecy began to unfold. A sudden storm descended upon Florence, and a stray bolt of lightning struck the Mercato Nuovo, igniting a small fire. The carefully laid plans were put to the test. Alessandra and Giovanni, working tirelessly alongside the city's fire brigades, coordinated the effort to contain the blaze. The fire breaks they had established proved crucial, preventing the flames from spreading beyond the initial point of ignition. As the fire was brought under control, Fra Bartolomeo watched from his studio, a sense of profound relief washing over him. The prophecy had been partially fulfilled, but the worst had been averted, or had it? The altarpiece remained, a constant reminder of the delicate balance between fate and free will. Florence had been spared the full devastation predicted, but the experience left an indelible mark on the city and its people. The painting's legacy endured, a testament to the power of symbols and the enduring mystery of prophecy. The political stability was achieved, but the city was forever changed.